To the curious, the seekers, and the experts, welcome. Our topic today is coronavirus. We recorded our discussion last Thursday, and as I edit on Monday, March 9th, it seems prudent to give an overview of some of the more recent developments. The Dow Jones is currently down about 7%. The CDC is currently reporting a total of 423 cases in the U.S., 19 total deaths, of which we should note 15 were at one location, the Life Care Senior Center in Seattle. Travel-related cases are 72, person-to-person spread 29, under investigation 322, and once again total cases 423. And these are the states that are reporting, with the red states having 101 to 200 cases, the orange states having 21 to 50 cases, the lighter orange 11 to 20, the darker yellow 6 to 10, the lighter yellow 1 to 5, and of course the very light lemon yellow, none. The alternative media do not seem to agree on what's actually happening with the coronavirus. The opinions range from John Rappaport, who more or less considers the whole thing to be something of a hoax, to people like Greg Rubini, who are stating that the number of cases and deaths have been severely underreported, and who is contending that President Trump should declare martial law for 2 months. Is there cause for alarm? If so, how can we protect ourselves? The Shanghai government officially recommends vitamin C for COVID-19, as have quite a few alternative health advocates. Vitamin C is said to be one of the best ways in which to both boost the immune system and rid the body of antioxidants, which is said to be one of the most deadly aspects of the virus. I have a video of how to make liposomal vitamin C, which enters the body more effectively than intravenous vitamin C, which the Shanghai government is recommending as therapy. And to be very clear, we at Poli-Psych Podcast do not want to add fuel to a panic fire. And for anyone who is very concerned about the virus, we are including a link to a webpage where you can find a link where you can test yourself for the coronavirus with a free voice analysis. So in that context, I want to introduce the discussion that Don and Ken and I had. Probably foremost in the three of our minds is the media coverage. Ken, you mentioned some things about Zero Hedge and how they have been covering the virus. Would you like to address that?
It's total panic. Zero Hedge is, I think their motto is probably print first, verify later, but I still find it interesting. They have caught some things early, and usually if there's a spike in the market one way or another, you can go to Zero Hedge and it'll immediately tell me what's going on, and whether or not it's true is a different story. But their rate they're not too bad. They're an aggregator, so they're getting their stories from other places, and the people that run it, the name escapes me at the moment, but they are involved in high-end financial transactions and derivatives and so on. At least the founder and I think the other two principal editors. But what I started to notice right away with the corona thing was just an excess of coverage. I would say at least 50% of the stories were devoted to coronavirus, and they were hyperbolic and very scary stories. Right out of the gate, though, most stories develop over time, and this one showed up in whole cloth on day one. Is the worst thing in the world. So that's suspicious. And I think what we'll do today, we'll just speculate on what's going on, because we really don't know. In fact, I just saw a story on, Zero Hedge, that we have a Chinese scientist who is pointing out the fact that in their mind, or in his mind, that that there is a genetic explanation for coronavirus discriminating by race. I don't know what to make of this. It's a scary snowball with little things coming off of it, and certainly is creating. We're going to talk about the market panic that it's engendered, which is significant, a self-fulfilling loop, feedback loop, supply chain oriented. And, we seem to have these virus stories come up every election year, which is another factor. But this one is definitely bonus material. It's very real from what can be gleaned from undercover video and so on, that there is something going on, but it's just the impact is mind-bogglingly hyperbolic at this point. The impact on media and the effect that it's having on markets.
I want to weigh in there on the media fear panic thing. There's nothing that makes that point in my mind better than the stories telling us that sales of Corona beer have gone down out of fear of the coronavirus. So this is kind of makes you realize, oh my gosh, there really are a lot of very ignorant people out there. And that is a danger in itself. But the people are that fearful that they are actually not drinking Corona beer because they're afraid of getting the virus.
It might also be party buzzkill, who knows?
Sure. One thing that I've noticed that is really baffling is that I follow a lot of alternative media, and there's this really strange disconnect. There's two parallel means of thought. One is overemphasizing it, and I have natural news on the screen now. Natural news is suggesting that China is understating the number of deaths. The press is understating how dangerous it is, and it's a terrible threat, and everybody needs to be prepared for it. The other path of alternative media thought is that, I won't say that the whole thing is a hoax, but that it's far overstated, that this is really, coronavirus is really nothing more than a bad cold, maybe not even a bad cold. Children barely get the sniffles, I've heard, from coronavirus. It's only a threat to people over 60 who have some other health issue that weakens them. So again, these two, even in alternative media, there's a tremendous diversity of thought pertaining to what's really going on. And as you said, Ken, we don't want to give people the impression that we're telling you what's really going on, because we ourselves are not certain. We have some insights that we want to share, but we really don't know what the actual reality is about the virus.
Well, I do want to point out that there was a very important clue that I want to make sure that we don't overlook pertaining to the truth. And I'm talking about the way that media narrative gets pushed by the establishment press, the establishment media, and oftentimes what happens is they have a certain direction they want the narrative to go, and if it doesn't go in that direction, then they will act as if it did and make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. And specifically in this instance, what I'm talking about is the accusation a few days ago that President Trump said the virus was a hoax. Now, of course, he never said that. He said that the new hoax is that the media coverage of the inadequacy of the preparation was the new hoax. But they took his comments out of context and tried to create a narrative that President Trump was saying that the virus was a hoax. Now, what that tells me is that there's a very strong possibility that they wanted President Trump to try to calm people down by saying this virus wasn't really dangerous, and they were really ready to trot out some evidence that real people had really died and how horrible the president is that he didn't take this seriously. Well, President Trump is jumping through all the hoops of taking it seriously, appointing special task force, including Vice President Pence and all of that, and they've tried to say that was inept, etc. So I see evidence that the media wanted to push this in the fear direction and to really overemphasize the President Trump's calming effect. They wanted to turn into a, oh my God, he's incompetent and this is really going to get bad. So definitely the mainstream media is pushing fear on this. But as far as what the actual numbers are, it's really hard to tell. One of the things going on, and I know I'm kind of jumping ahead here a little bit, is that we've seen evidence, and we've tweeted out this on our Twitter account, that the blue states are getting funding by claiming a certain number of deaths in coronavirus, and that qualifies them for federal funding. Well, if the deep state is getting funding sources are getting shut down by President Trump taking action against deep state funding sources behind the scenes, well, they've just found another way to get some more money to prop up their agenda. And I think there's some evidence that could be going on. So any thoughts on either of those ideas, Ken?
It's the fear aspect. It was the first symptom that I noticed of this disease. Obviously, we're living in a bubble a little bit. We're still pretty far away from the emergence of this virus, and the fear itself is a contextual scenario, and basically you have to start with a field and ground from the Gestalt perspective. Is a pretty good orientation for the reality of this. Is the backdrop is that everybody's safe. We're all safe. We're all living forever on this planet, and that nothing bad ever happens. It's on television or in the media, and then all of a sudden we have the figure itself of this virus arising, and most of the coverage has been in that hyperbolic realm of generating fear, as opposed to, well, let's just picture a physician in a clinical setting, and let's say an internist, and they, if there's a bad test result, they don't come running into the exam room with their hair on fire, screaming, "You're going to die! You're all going to die!" Bedside manner will usually go more towards the thinking function with the logical. Okay, here's this, calmly expressed, not in a panic mode. Here's what we can do about it. And I think that was the president's reaction as well. But the media reaction is more to the more animalistic limbic system, is rather than the frontal lobe. Frontal lobes is strategizing and contextualizing and using the higher functioning of the frontal lobes in intuition and thinking. Everybody's got that, but when the fear distracts the cognitive apparatus, that energy, that internal psychic energy gets focused into the limbic system and will generate a literal physiological panic reaction. And the doctor doesn't do that when he comes into the exam room for that reason. Bedside manner is all about keeping the patient calm. But we definitely see a process of intentional panic. They're yelling fire in a crowded theater. And I think Zero Hedge has been one of the worst purveyors of that. And the reason I'm suspicious is because if they are shorting the market, they could literally be having an effect on their trade. Now, whether or not that's legal, I don't have any proof of that. But just scrolling through the Zero Hedge, anytime you want, anybody, any time of day, you'll find the most horrific headlines, and half the page is devoted to that coverage. And it's just amazing that's just one channel, and this is kind of it's an alternative news channel. But again, this is the alternative news, which normally has a broad mixture of hyperbolic stories in different categories. But this time it's all focused on this one story. So it's just suspicious. The whole thing, and the fact that the blue states seem to be going into a state of emergency after one fatality. Not that that's, it's a human life. But we have lots of contextual situations. We have the whole issue of the unborn, and we have the auto accidents. It's just a whole raft of things that are not being featured in this scenario, this fear scenario that's being created by the media. Do you remember that scene in Ghostbusters when there's something like dogs and cats living together? And
yes,
it's sort of like this 1 minute of panic. It's a silly, goofy thing, but it's sort of like this hyperbolic panic.
Yeah, I want to mention, since you were on the subject of finances and the possibility of intentionally crashing the market, that in those of us that are aware of the precarious nature of the financial bubble that the United States and a lot of the world is in, there's actually two schools of thought there, going back to Cindy's idea that there's two tracks on this in the mainstream media, and I think they may be tied actually to two financial possibilities. And one is that the markets need to crash before we have some kind of a financial reset, and the second would be that the president is working hard to make the transition is as smooth as possible and doesn't need any event in order to transition. So I thought that's worth pointing out there, that there may be a tie to desired financial outcomes, but it's not clear which people are supporting. To oversimplify, I think that the good hats, the patriots, the President Trump supporters, they probably don't want the market to crash. And the people that want the market to crash are the guys who are used to bringing order out of chaos. That's their game plan. They are the chaos evil entity that Maxwell Smart was always trying to defeat, and they are the ones that are trying to bring the market down. Now, some people may say, well, President Trump has to pretend like he doesn't want to have the market go down, but he really does. Well, I'm not going to second guess that one. I think actually President Trump is probably being pretty straightforward on that. He's right. He wants the market to go down enough that he can bring it back up and continue to have it going up during the time of the election. I think that's the game plan there. So that's the financial long and short of it there.
It's possible that there is a deep state plan to crash the market, but at the same time, what's happening with the virus is it seems to play into the president's hands in many respects, because he's now kind of a hero for wanting border security, which, as he said, border security is health security. And also, he's been reworking trade agreements, which makes for more reliable supply chains. So I find it interesting that, that maybe people who are his enemies would want to promote all this and crash the markets, because it's I think it's making him look like a hero in many respects.
Right, and I don't know if we mentioned the 5G connection yet, but that's another angle going on here, and that really makes me think that this could be a weaponized virus. I think there is some pretty strong evidence scientifically that it was designed in a lab, and that it was a deep state operation that President Trump was actually not completely oblivious to, and that's why he was able to shut down the borders so quickly. So if you are in the neighborhood of a 5G antenna, you might want to find some protection or get some distance between you and that thing, because that will probably increase your vulnerability. So it's not so much the 5G on the phone itself, but the nearness to 5G broadcasting antennas. And there is a great site, Antenna Search is the name that I usually use to bring it up. And there's probably a few sites that you can find out about what antennas are in your area. So recommend doing that.
There is, once more, it doesn't seem that there's any reason to have a tremendous amount of fear about the virus. And a lot of this seems to be overblown. And we hope that President Trump, and we trust that he was right when he said, look, this will be over. And it won't go on forever. And it'll be over, and we'll recover, and everything will be fine. So to our listeners, the curious, the seekers, the experts, we thank you for joining us for this consideration of the coronavirus and some of the media hype surrounding it. We hope that you have enjoyed this time. If you have, we ask that you would please click like, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on BitChute, certainly follow us on Twitter, and if you have a moment, visit our website. Once again, thanks for joining us. Take care.